that I have not been so keen on making these little theme songs for each type, and I'm very sorry about that, but I felt like it would be important to give one of my favorite types in all the world their own special introductory song. That all being said, today you probably picked it up from the title of the video, but today I want to talk about what makes INFJs awesome. I have always been drawn to INFJs throughout my entire life, and a lot of that is because of the balance they bring to my personality, but a lot of it is just the individual skills that they bring and the value that that brings just in general. And I think this is why they become one of the most popular and favorited personality types. And, also why no one believes that anyone's an INFJ, because INFJs are supposed to be the rarest type. And so out there on the internet, there's a little bit of like a gatekeeping sort of thing happening for people who claim to be INFJ. And if that has happened to you, I just want to say, first and foremost, I am very sorry if I have ever done that to you. And I am very sorry if you have experienced that before, because regardless of what your type is, no one should be gatekeeping anyone. It is your life and your journey to figure out your type, not anyone else's to butt their heads in. If you ask for their opinion and they give it, that's one thing. But if somebody just tells you that you're not the type that you think you are, you know what I say to that? Screw them. But today is all about reveling in the glory that is the INFJ. So I'm going to explain the cognitive processes of an INFJ and what is so awesome about that. Why am I personally drawn to INFJs? And for those INFJs that are watching, why you should be proud of who you are. Before we get going, I think it goes without saying, but at the same time, I feel like I should mention it, that by me saying that INFJs are awesome, and even the fact that they're one of my favorite types, means nothing other than I really personally get along well with them and enjoy their presence. Does that mean that they're actually inherently better than any other personality type? Absolutely not. And if you are a different type than the one I'm discussing right now, I encourage you to check out my series on the 16 personalities and what makes each one of them awesome, because there is a lot of amazing things that each different personality can bring to the table. And just because INFJs are one of the most popular on the internet, they're the cool kids of the internet, doesn't mean that they're any better than you or your personality type. But with all that being said, let's talk about the INFJ. INFJs have the following cognitive function stack, which is required that we talk about before we really delve into how each of these cognitive functions work together to make an INFJ. The cognitive functional stack of an INFJ looks a little bit like this. First, they lead with introverted intuition. Then they have extroverted feeling, followed by introverted thinking, and ending with extroverted sensing. So what does all that mean? How does that all work together? Let's go ahead and talk about that. First and foremost, INFJs lead with the primary cognitive function of introverted intuition. Introverted intuition often gets this sort of reputation of being a psychic or being able to see the future or whatever. And so a lot of people say, oh, you're an INFJ. You can tell the future, can't you? Well, not necessarily. What introverted intuition actually means that in tandem of their extroverted sensing, they're able to get a good sense of everything that's happening in the external environment and reality and have a good sense of where that's heading. The thing is, all of their thoughts are mulling over situations, where those situations are heading, mulling over these different things and what is ultimately going to happen with them. You might often hear an INFJ say something like, that relationship probably isn't going to work out. Or, hey, this is probably going to be a problem area for you and your friend. Or, maybe you shouldn't start dating that person because, here's this red flag behavior. They're very good at picking up on that stuff. And that's why they often become in the role of a counselor to many friends. I have had INFJs in my life who have kind of become like a counselor, and it's not that I'm trying to force that upon themselves, but they kind of fall into that role naturally. There is a little bit of an indulgence for them in helping to be a counselor. Now, don't get me wrong. You can't take advantage of an INFJ's desire to be a counselor type person. They're very naturally attuned with where things are heading and how things are going and how everything fits together. So they're naturally going to want to be able to share those insights that they have, and especially with their friends. But taking advantage of that is going to make them feel like, maybe you don't really care about them. So be careful of how much you try to use that counselor side of the INFJs, because you have to know that at the end of the day, that side can be a little bit draining, because they are not ENFJs. They are INFJs. They want to live in the world of introverted intuition. They want to spend their time mulling over these possibilities and where they're heading to so that they can try to pick the best possible path for themselves to take. And that skill can be used with other people, and especially when it comes to relationships. And the reason being is their second cognitive function. Extroverted feeling is often, referred to as being able to externalize emotions. And although there could be a piece of that, sort of, and yes, Carl Jung definitely talks about how extroverted feeling is very descriptive of their feelings on the outside. You're probably not actually going to see that a lot from an INFJ because it's their second cognitive function and not their primary mode of being. One of the really interesting things, however, about extroverted feeling is that they're very good at reading situations involving people and their motivations. They're very good at figuring out people's motivations really quickly. They're not necessarily going to be perfect. They're not going to know the exact reasons for why a certain person is motivated in a certain way. But with their introverted intuition and their extroverted feeling, they're going to be pretty good at guessing and having a pretty dang good guess of what someone's motivation is, even if it's a completely new situation and person and they know nothing about them. Those very small interactions can tell an INFJ a lot based on the assumptions and understandings they have of the real world. This makes them really good at counseling people because they can tell you, hey, that's where this person's kind of bringing down your relationship a little bit. You should kind of watch out for that. Another thing about extroverted feeling is that it enjoys an environment where it is emotionally stable. They don't want an environment where there's a lot of fighting, and they don't want an environment that's incredibly boring. They want a good, happy environment, and that's where they are best at. That's where they really, really shine. And they're actually pretty good at creating these sort of environments. However, it's not their number one skill. It's not what they want to spend all their time on. They kind of do it out of necessity. So sometimes you'll find INFJs trying to steer the conversation to help release the tension of the conversation, not because they necessarily want to stray away from the point or the discussion, but because they're trying to level out the heat of the conversation and make it a little less volatile. And that is an amazing skill that I wish I could do better at. And let's talk about their introverted thinking, which is the favorite cognitive function of an INFJ. Yes, you heard me right. The favorite cognitive function. This is the cognitive function that they love developing, they love delving into, and this is where they spend most of their conscious time. You know how I said that they're always looking at where things are heading and how things are going? Well, they kind of need introverted thinking to make decisions based on that information that they're mulling over. They could play these different intuitions over and over and over in their head, but without something to make a decision upon it, that's all it is ideas and concepts floating around in their head. Introverted thinking helps them make sense of these concepts floating around in their head. And that's why you find a lot of them love to philosophize, because they love this idea of the big picture, making sense of the world, and at the same time, they're using their introverted thinking. Introverted thinking is the cognitive function that helps a person decide what makes sense, what is logical, how do these different pieces fit together to create a bigger whole system? How does all of this work? INFJs love to figure out how the world works and how society works and how people are used by other people. They love psychology. And I think that's why so many INFJs are drawn to MBTI, because they love understanding the world. Now, on top of that, they love philosophy. Almost every single INFJ that I've met is incredibly into philosophy. And this can oftentimes be a deciding factor between ISFJ or INFJ because of that love of philosophy. Yes, ISFJs love making sense of the world as well, but they're a little less into the big picture and much more into the practical picture, how they can make sense of the people in their lives and the situations in their lives. INFJs are looking at the big picture of humanity, and just like ENFJs, they often push toward their vision. They often want to manifest that vision, which is what is leading us into the extroverted sensing. Extroverted sensing is all about taking advantage of the moment. It is about taking advantage of the way things are in reality to achieve your introverted intuition goal. So although maybe they're not the most developed in their extroverted sensing, a well-developed INFJ who has worked on their extroverted sensing is going to enable themselves to actually make their goals a reality. Some of the most developed INFJs out there are gurus, and that is because they have learned how to take these intuitions, how to take these thoughts, how to take their goals of making humanity better and make it happen, to teach other people these ideas and these concepts and make it a reality, because they know that it's not necessarily them, it's not necessarily by them forcing these changes upon society, but it's about them taking the time to express these ideas and impress them upon other people. I cannot even begin to go past the tip of the iceberg with INFJs, and in this video I feel like I have barely described anything about them, but I wanted to do a quick overview of what they do that makes them so awesome, how their little personality functions work together to make this amazing, one of the most favorited types of all, the INFJ. INFJs, tell me or tell me not, are you not just like a wee bit nihilistic? If you don't know what nihilism is, Google it. Although I've barely brushed the tip of the iceberg in describing INFJs, I hope that if you are an INFJ, that I have help to somewhat describe how you work to your friends and that you can share this with them to help explain who you are. And if you're not an INFJ, I hope that I have done a pretty decent job of explaining how INFJs work and what makes them so amazing. Why is the world obsessed with them? I don't know, but I know why I'm obsessed with them. I just told you. And I hope that you guys have enjoyed this video, have enjoyed this little learning experience about INFJs, and I want to thank you so very much for watching this. If you're new here and you like this video, go ahead and like and subscribe for more discussions about personality and books and reading and writing and all kinds of things related to psychology and the implementation of psychology. Today we talked about INFJs, tomorrow who knows? But with that, have a beautiful, amazing, fantastic day. Bye!